I have the most selfish husband in this universe. And I also have a very selfish best friend, or should I say ex-best friend. Guys, I'm going to break down this entire story to you, but just know, I need your support. I need your help. I have a lot of questions. Oh, let's start from the beginning. I'm 32 and female, and I never thought I would be writing a post like this, but here I am pouring out my heart to strangers on the interwebs. It all started when I got my husband caught. My husband of 5 years, let's call him James, cheating on me with my childhood best friend Stella. Yeah, exactly. Well, for years I had built a life that made others envious of me. I was actually happily married, living in a house that felt nothing short of a mansion, in one of the richest suburbs of New York City. I mean, come on, I actually had it all. A prospering career as an interior designer and a loving husband who also had a thriving business of his own. Seemingly, I had it all, but the reality was far from the truth. You see, although I was financially comfortable and James never required me to pitch in bills, groceries, vacations, or any other household expenses, he was nowhere as charming and caring as everyone thought him to be. James excelled at playing the perfect husband in public. To the outside world, he's charming, attentive, and at social gatherings with colleagues and friends, he showered me with compliments, his arms draped possessively around my waist. With colleagues and friends, he was Mr. Perfect husband, attentive, thoughtful, and the kind of guy who brought flowers just because. You know, it made my blood boil. But behind closed doors, he was a different person entirely. Chores were a foreign concept to him. Birthdays and anniversaries were met with blank stares and last-minute drugstore flowers. Romance had become a forgotten relic of our dating days, and in reality he barely paid attention to me. Our occasional dinner dates were always planned out by his secretary, who was also the one to tell me the date, time, and location of the dinner. Ugh. James never once cared enough to invite me himself. So, when he acted all loving in front of everybody, it made me feel like I was going crazy. Was I the only one who saw this selfish, inconsiderate man beneath the charming mask? You know, despite all of this, I still believed we had love and respect for each other somewhere, and I remained faithful to him. No matter what. Never in my wildest of dreams I'd imagined him to betray me like that, and with none other than my own best friend. I had known Stella since we were in high school. I did. We were inseparable, and from birthdays to Christmas we did everything together. Both of us were practically like sisters, which obviously meant that she was the maid of honor at my wedding, and so was I at hers. When she struggled to find a job after graduation, it was me who got her a job in James' company. I helped her out in every sense of the word, any way I could, which often included financial help too. Well, she began to change soon after starting her job at James' company. Everything from her dressing sense to her way of speaking, she began impersonating me from head to toe. The worst part was that I was too naive to even understand her true intentions behind all of it. Oblivious to the truth, I gave her full access to my wardrobe and jewelry. She would come to visit me every other day and take whatever she liked, whether it was my expensive dresses, perfume, jewelry, or anything, really. Now that I think about it, I feel like throwing myself off a cliff for letting her take my things without any shame and then eventually going after my husband too. Slowly, James started having late-night shifts at work and taking business trips that lasted for absolute weeks. Then it escalated into a hushed phone call, which he cut short when I entered the room. Knowing glances exchanged across the dining table during parties, inside jokes they shared that left me feeling excluded, and initially, I brushed them off, clinging to the belief that James at least would not betray me deeply. Luckily, there was someone else working at James' office that I knew. It was my classmate from college, Mason. Though we weren't close, we had mutual feelings of respect and greeted each other with warmth regarding whenever we met. On a usual late Saturday night when James was out working, I was sitting in my living room scrolling Instagram when I saw Mason post a story where he was out clubbing. So jokingly, I texted him, "When did work shift go to club shift?" "What work? It's a Saturday night," he replied, and for some reason I felt my heart sink. If work was off like usual, where was James? With shaking hands, I began dialing James's number, but after a second thought, canceled dialing and instead called Stella. After a few rings, she finally picked up and said, "Well, where are you?" I asked.
Oh, didn't James tell you? We have an important meeting tomorrow. The entire office is swamped with work, honey. Oh, I have to go. Bye. She replied in a rather annoyed tone and hung up. So I called up Mason and bombarded him with questions, and at first he was reluctant to say anything, but when I promised his name would not be mentioned and it would not affect his job, he began to talk. He told me that James and Stella were quite chummy at the office. They often went out to lunch together and stayed late at the office even after everybody had left. Oh, that's right. After everyone had left. Anyways, he had me there with rumors. He heard them amongst the employees about their, quote, business trips. That conveniently overlapped, even though Stella did not directly report to James. Moreover, Stella had secured 2 promotions in a row incredibly fast and began acting like she was the owner of the company, insulting people, making others do her work while barely doing anything herself. Her secret nickname among the employees was Mega M. M for mistress. Hearing all this made my heart churn. No way this was all true. Mason must have had a misunderstanding and it might all be just a rumor. But the very next day it all came crashing down. What happened was James went to use the washroom, leaving his laptop unattended. An email notification flashed on the laptop, which made me curious. It didn't take me long to rummage through his emails to find thank yous and visits or shop again emails from various hotels and all sorts of prestigious stores. What took me back was the recent email confirming the booking of a honeymoon suite in Hawaii for the weekend. James had mentioned a few days before he had a business trip coming this weekend. My heart lurched. Stella. It couldn't be Stella. Stella was my best friend, the person I trusted with every secret. Moreover, she was married too, and with an amazing husband, and the pieces fell into place with a sickening thud. They were having an affair. My husband and my best friend, the 2 people I trusted the most in this world, were betraying me in the worst way possible. Rage coursed through me. How dare they? James, the man who could not be bothered to pick up his dirty socks, who treated every romantic gesture like a chore, was cheating on me. And Stella, the woman who knew every hurt, every dream, every insecurity I harbored, had the audacity to betray our trust. For days, I wrestled the urge to confront them, to scream my heart out, just to let them know my hurt. Right now, I'm burning in agony while James and Stella are enjoying their rendezvous in Hawaii. I'm trying to pretend like everything's hunky-dory. I'm tired of being the only one putting effort into this relationship. And most of all, I'm tired of being taken for granted by the 2 people I trusted the most. So I've made a decision. I'm going to get back at them, but not in a way that would give them the satisfaction of a tearful outburst. Oh no, I want them to squirm, to suffer, to feel the weight of their betrayal, and finally get even. What do you guys think? Updates number 1. Hey guys, hello again. Before going straight to what happened, I would first like to thank those who showered me with support and helpful advice. It really made my heart melt knowing that I'm not alone, and there's so many people backing me up, so here's what I did. The first step in my revenge plan was to inform someone close to Stella, somebody who would feel the same rage and betrayal I felt. After careful consideration, I decided to call Oliver, Stella's husband. It wasn't an easy decision, knowing that I would be shattering his world just as mine had been shattered, but I could not let him continue to live in the dark, unaware of the deception happening right underneath his nose. Nervous, I called him and asked to meet for coffee. We weren't exactly on one-on-one terms, so he was quite surprised and reluctant to agree. So I had to tell him it was about our partners, and it'd be better if he did not tell his wife about it. Hearing that, he agreed, and the next day, after James and Stella had gone out of town to, quote, meet a client, we met up for a cup of coffee. When I first approached Oliver with the shocking news of James and Stella's affair, he didn't believe a word I said. He became defensive and brushed it off as nonsense, refusing to entertain the idea that his wife could be unfaithful. It was heartbreaking to see him cling to denial, but I understood his reluctance to accept such a devastating truth. Determined to make him see the reality of the situation, I proposed a deal. I suggested that if we could catch our partners red-handed, he would have to help me in getting revenge. Reluctantly, Oliver agreed, though I could see the skepticism in his eyes. Together, we devised a plan. A plan to catch James and Stella in the act without them realizing we were onto them, and it required careful coordination and timing, but we were both determined to expose the truth. The opportunity presented itself after a few weeks when James again announced to go on an urgent late-night business meeting. Suspecting something fishy was going on, I asked Oliver to help me find the place where they were supposed to meet. It was easy. He was friends with James's secretary, and finding it out was a piece of cake for him. James and Stella had arranged to meet at a secluded restaurant, presumably to discuss their latest business trip. You see, Oliver and I watched from a discreet distance and still allowed us to hear their conversation, our hearts pounding in anticipation. As they sat across from each other, their conversation grew increasingly intimate, their gestures and expressions proving the truth of their affair. Hours passed, and just as we were beginning to lose hope, we spotted James and Stella exiting the restaurant, their laughing ringing out in the night. My heart sank at the sight, but I held Oliver back, silently urging him to wait. We trailed them discreetly as they walked down the street, and their conversation were full of flirtatious undertones. Suddenly, they stopped in front of a hotel, their voices growing hushed as they disappeared inside, and it was a moment of truth. Oliver and I exchanged a determined glance before following them, careful to stay out of sight. We watched them from a distance as James and Stella checked into a room together, their actions leaving no room for doubt. Despite the overwhelming urge to confront them then and there, we held back, knowing that revealing ourselves would only tip them off, and instead we quietly slipped away, our minds buzzing with plans of revenge. Oliver's reaction was as explosive as I expected. The fury in his eyes mirrored my own, and for a moment I feared he would storm off to confront Stella then and there, but I managed to calm him down, promising that I had a plan to make them pay for their betrayal. So finally, when Oliver had calmed down a bit, he seemed more determined to make James and Stella than more, and it gives me a sense of relief now, but I'm not sure what to do. Any suggestions or help is deeply appreciated. Please let me know how I can make my husband and the best friend pay for what they've done to me. Update number 2. Those telling me to still not be sure if James and Stella are cheating need to get their brains checked. I mean, what more proof you can have than a man and a woman drunk? Book a luxurious hotel suite and spend a night there together, huh? I'm pretty sure that that's not how professional meetings are conducted. Only infidelity occurs behind closed hotel doors. Anyways, it's been a week since I last posted, and after witnessing all that, Oliver and I were seething with anger over the betrayal by James and Stella. It felt like the betrayal not just so much me, but also to Oliver, knowing our partners have deceived us so callously. So we huddled together, determined to enact a revenge, to make them feel the pain that they had caused us. Our plan had to be subtle and cunning so they would not suspect a thing. First I went ahead to reach out to James. Trying to sound as sweet as honey despite the boiling rage within me, I suggested a shopping trip, knowing James could not resist indulging me so he could show off to everybody later on. We strolled through the high-end stores, and I picked out the most expensive items. I was in the thought of Stella's reaction when she sees them later, relishing in it. After shopping, we went for dinner at a cozy restaurant where I made sure to capture every moment of our evening together. James was oblivious to my ulterior motive as we posed for pictures, his arm around me, a fake smile plastered on his face. I posted the photos on social media, knowing Stella would see them and feel a pang of jealousy. Predictably, Stella took the bait and she messaged James suggesting they meet up the next day, perhaps trying to assert her dominance or reclaim what she felt was hers. It was a small victory for us, a confirmation that our plan was working. So meanwhile, Oliver was playing his part in our scheme. He patiently waited for the opportune moment to strike, biding his time until Stella left her phone unattended. And when the moment came, he used Stella's phone to send a fabricated message to James, getting angry at him for having a date with me and threatening to expose their affair. And just as quickly as it was sent, Oliver deleted the message, leaving no trace of the deception. When James saw the message, his face controlled, and he contorted with rage. He hastily excused himself from the table and went to the bathroom. Since I couldn't put myself at risk by going to the men's washroom, I tipped the waiter several hundred smackaroos, just so he could go and hear what James was doing. My intuition was correct, just as I expected. James had gone to call Stella and asked her about the text message that she sent. Oblivious to the second message that Oliver had sent instead of her, Stella said that she had only sent a simple message and that James was overreacting. They both got into a heated argument and James told her not to come to the office for a few days. Then he came back unbeknownst to the fact that I was aware of both sides of the conversation thanks to the waiter I tipped and Oliver. So James continued to act like nothing had happened, and so did I. Meanwhile, celebrating with Oliver on text over the success of the first stage of our mission. But the plan is far from over. While me and Oliver continue to plant seeds of doubt in both of their heads, another perfect opportunity has presented itself for our second course of action. Thanks to my sources, I found out that James has entrusted Stella with a very important project that can bring millions of dollars to the company. But if it fails, James can lose twice as much. So what better way than to sabotage it all? I've already shared what I know with Oliver, and now the only thing left for us to do is to get more details about the project and overthrow it. I'll keep you guys updated about it, so wish me all the best. Update number 3. Hey guys, so here's an update after a week and a half as promised. Getting information about the project was quite easy thanks to Oliver's connections. He has a lawyer and getting information was not hard for him. It took him 1 to 2 days and he already had everything we needed to know about the project, even including the names and complete details of the project owners. I hired some people who could send anonymous messages to the clients about Stella, who was the project head, and spread misinformation about her. So, they sent the project owners messages about how Stella was involved in fraud and was even known for embezzling money, stealing money from her previous project's assigned budget, and reporting to clients for insufficient funds. Well, the owners grew suspicious and began having doubts about hiring James's company to do the project. Stella's incompetency and ignorance of work made it even easier for us to sabotage the project. I mean, her lack of attention to detail and technical knowledge often left the clients frustrated and confused. Important deadlines were missed and project proposals were riddled with inconsistencies. Client emails expressing concern about the project's direction and delays started flooding in Stella's inbox. Instead of addressing the issues head-on, Stella, fueled by her inflated ego, dismissed them as mere hiccups. Wow. James, oblivious to the chaos between the beneath surface, remained blissfully unaware, and he continued to rely heavily on Stella, the rising star status further blinding him into her shortcomings. And then I made my final blow. I gathered all the details Oliver found out about Stella's project and sold them to the competitors, obviously via a hired person to cover my tracks. The competitor company, who had lost the project to James's company, made a huge fuss about leaked information and questioned the integrity of James's professionalism. One thing James doesn't compromise is his work, and even if it was his mistress, he did not hesitate to insult her in front of the entire office and blame her for the blundell. Well, from what I heard, he went on to scream at her for a solid 15 minutes while everyone watched with utter satisfaction, eventually making her cry. It felt so satisfying to hear, and I wish I had seen it in person. Clients, they began calling James directly, and no matter how hard James tried to salvage it, the damage was done. The clients, they canceled the project, resulting in James losing millions in revenue. Not only this, but thanks to this newly built reputation, many clients straight up cut ties with James, and big names pulled back their investments even. So, James's reputation was in ruins and he blamed Stella for it. That day, James and Stella got into a massive fight in his office, and James ended up breaking up with her and firing her straight up from the company. You know, according to Mason, it was the loudest breakup he had ever heard, and eventually the loudest confession to infidelity someone had ever made. All of it made me giggle as me and Oliver and I celebrated our sweet, sweet victory. That day, when Stella returned home, Oliver decided he was done with Stella. Completely done. He didn't tell her why and told her to move out because he needed a break from their relationship. It was indeed very satisfactory. Watching Stella crumble like this, but I'm not yet done. I want to reach her and James another lesson that they'll remember for the rest of their lives. So while Oliver casts Stella out of his life and moves on, I just straight up welcome her home. In my home with open hands, only to give her and James an even worse end of the story that they started. Update number 4.
So today marks the end of my revenge. As per my last update, which was about a month ago, after Oliver had kicked Stella out of her house, she came looking for help in the only place that she could. Me. I can't tell you how much it made me feel better to hear her like this. Her usual attitude was gone, no longer bothering to impersonate me, and she looked like she had been through many storms at once, and in a way she had. Mascara was running down her face, and her hair was a mess, and all she had was a duffel bag, loaded with only necessities that she could pack last minute. I sat in the living room with her, comforting her while also knowing that James would be home any minute. Soon James entered the house and stopped right in his tracks upon seeing Stella there. For a moment it seemed like he had forgotten Stella was my best friend first, and that I had known her way before he went on and cheated on me with her.
"What are you doing here?"
Surprised by suddenly seeing her there, he asked. I could tell that he was afraid if Stella had told me something. See, James' professional life was already in tatters. There's no way that he was going to let his personal image get destroyed, too. I informed James that Stella had argued with Oliver, and I had invited her to stay until, the things were resolved. I sweetened my voice to ensure that he would not object. Cornered, James offered a lukewarm response. Stella visibly reacted to him calling her best friend before James retreated to his room, and sensing an opportunity, I mentioned making soup for Stella, knowing she would likely use the chance to pursue James now that Oliver was no longer a factor. Days went on, and Stella was being bold with her actions by every passing hour. I pretended to be the fool they thought I was and let them reconcile behind my back. While they enjoyed clandestine meetings, I made sure my secretly installed camera, caught everything. Planning to reveal them at the upcoming event, making it James's slow, and, this is going to be my James and Stella party. It was an honorary event being held for James where he was to be rewarded thanks for his services to the community. He had worked hard to make everyone believe in how good he was, and I knew it. It would only be a matter of time before he restored his reputation as a reputable businessman by just pinning all the blame down on Stella and saving his face. To stop him from not facing the consequences of his actions, I had to strike quickly, and harder than ever, that he's never been able to recover from. And this reward ceremony, it was the perfect opportunity to do so. Well, finally, the day of the event arrived. I was ready to hit James on the curb. I would also like to give a speech in your honor before the award is presented, I said. I want to use this opportunity, guys, to tell everyone what an amazing husband he is. James's ego inflated, and they readily agreed, not having a clue what was about to come. Oliver and Stella were also there. I had my evidence and had made the arrangement beforehand. At last I was called upon the stage where I finally laid it out in front of the 300 people there. Explicit images of James and Stella streaming behind me on the big projector, of course, and the spotlight flashed on both of them. I can't describe in words how satisfying it felt to see them like this. Mr. James, I'm divorcing you. Have fun with your mistress and my ex-BFF, Stella. I said that and walked off the stage, and both of them have to deal with people's eyes and camera flashes. Tomorrow the news will be all over social media. That I can assure you of. Update number 5. Mini update. Today might be the last time I'll be adding an update. The revenge is over and there's nothing more to say. It's been 3 months now since that not-so-honorary event, and soon after the event, James came running home trying to blame Stella for seducing him and to give him another chance. But in my book, there's no forgiving a liar and a cheat. Thankfully, the house was in my name, so it would have to be James, the one who leaves. I had the servants pack up his crap, and also Stella's stuff as well. While we were gone, and as soon as we returned, I ordered their bags to be thrown to the streets. Well, my case was strong, and it did not take long until I was finally divorced and had kicked James out of my life, and I'm not gonna lie. As soon as the dust settled down and I was left alone, I cried my little heart out. I've lost 2 of the most important people in my life, and I have no one else. But I won't let it make me weak or too naive enough to let any of them back into my life. I have my family, which I can rely on, and Oliver has promised to stay in touch, too. A few weeks after the divorce, I heard James had left the city. His business went completely bankrupt, and he was too ashamed to face anyone he knew. So the only thing that he could do was run away. There's no news of Stella, however.
Some people say that she's transformed into an alcoholic and an obsessive ex-wife, not accepting the fact that she has at least lost everything she owns. It hurts sometimes to know all this, but I guess they had it coming for a long time. In the end, I would like to thank all of you for the support and the advice that you've given me. You guys were a lot of help, so thank you and goodbye.